This is the Friday Night Fever Afterburn, sponsored by Peden Heating and Air Conditioning.
Welcome to Friday Night Fever Afterburn. Week 2 of the season is in the books. 2 weeks, 8 to go. The regular season. We got a long ways, but we got a lot of action to unpack tonight. A lot of scoring to unpack tonight.
Yeah.
We're going to get right into those scores. Kaleigh, take us away with those opening scores.
Well, a huge win for Mosley over at Tommy Oliver, 62-7. Made a statement tonight. And then the game, I was at another high-scoring matchup. The Blue Devils winning 44-14 over North Bay Haven. We got another one. The Battle of the Bulldogs, 46-0. Mary Anna wins at home. And then we have Vernon and Franklin County. Vernon wins that one 24-20.
Yeah, one close ball game.
Yeah.
Well, another close one. Bluntstown hosting Rutherford. Kind of, that if you look at the scoreboard from last year, you didn't really expect this one. Rutherford keeping it close, but Bluntstown hangs on. There's something in the way. I got 28-13 for Walton, beating South Walton at South Walton, so in Santa Rosa Beach, a big one for those Vikings. And then the Bucks just barely sneaking past Southwest Georgia Academy from, of course, up in Georgia. And then Freeport, a close loss on their home field to Jay, 20-14.
And then we have Walton on the road over in Alabama, 45-21. The Braves pick up the win. Another team visiting in Alabama, the Chipley Tigers, they win 2-0, 34-13 is that one. And then we have a couple games obviously not played tonight. Wewa Hitchka and Bell, that game was canceled due to the hurricane this week. Arnold Sneeds also postponed before the game. Weather conditions, about 5 inches of rain, a lot of rain up there.
Quite a bit of rain in Sneeds tonight.
Yeah. And then obviously another game that was postponed, Graceville and Acela Christian. That one was postponed early in the week, I think even Tuesday night or
That
so.
might have been postponed prior to the hurricane even making landfall, so I think Acela Christian was just getting ahead of things and said, hey, we'll scratch this one.
Yeah.
Didn't really get an exact answer, but that one not being played this week. So
that's all we know.
We got a lot to unpack tonight, a lot of scoring.
Yeah.
Let's go ahead and start with, first off, I want to once again let everybody know I picked the game of the week. I put Mosley and Bay. So for 2 consecutive weeks, our game of the week was pretty one-sided. So I will take that one once again. Let me know. Let me hear it. Mosley winning this one at 62-7.
Yeah.
Let's get right into it. Like I said, if you saw me bundled up on the sidelines wearing 2 rain jackets, yeah, that was me. It was, not my best start to the game, but Mosley, they came out strong in this one. MJ Wilkerson right out of the gate going nearly 65 yards to the house. He took off, and it was they didn't look back from there. I mean, the Mosley defense was electric from the start. They had Bay's number. This was honestly one of the only major positive yardage for Bay in the first half was this kickoff return here. But then right after that, Mosley's defense, they strapped it up. They were all over the backfield with John DeVos all night long. The freshman who looked sensational last week against a young Arnold team, against a more seasoned and much larger Mosley front line, was given all kinds of fits. Sammy Freitas running it with his legs, airing it out. We're about to see another one to LeBaron Black here. That man had a couple scores in the first half alone. It was Mosley from start to finish in this ball game. Last year was the revenge match. It was Jeremy Brown coming to town, beating his old team that, of course, previously coaching at Mosley. This year, it was Dolphins from start to finish. What do you think about Mosley coming in and putting up 62 points against Bay at Tommy Oliver?
We know Tommy Joe Whitten talked about treating this like a normal game, nothing crazy, very straightforward answers with those. I mean, I think this was a huge game for both teams. Obviously, huge rivalry there. I mean, any Bay County one, but this is one of the bigger ones in Bay County. So I know a win like this means a lot to both teams. I know Mosley was excited for that one, wanting to start the season on a high note. Obviously, they face a lot of tough teams throughout the season. So I think, starting off getting that win over Bay kind of sets a precedent for what's to come this season.
Right, and obviously, like we mentioned last week, Bay, a very young team. There's really not very many seniors on the squad at all. basically everybody graduated last year, but you can't say that Mosley's not young either. They have a few seniors sprinkled in there, then most of the roster is juniors and sophomores. So both these teams really, when they play next year, will pretty much have everybody back. There's only a couple seniors, that really make an impact on both teams. Cameron Keys hasn't even played in the first 2 weeks. He's still sidelined, so we haven't seen the Missouri commit on the back end for Mosley, so we'll have to see what happens when he comes back. But that Mosley defense, they were fired up. They were all over the backfield. I really would like to see, the box scores after that one, because I really don't know if Bay had positive yardage in the first half.
Well, and I think you talked about a young team, and that's obviously key for both teams, but one thing for Bay, I mean, they have some older guys, but like you talked about, that senior class last year for Bay was massive, and so they were on the field for a majority of every game, if not all the time every game last season. So they have some older guys, but they just don't have any actual playing experience. Maybe some 6-quarter guys that they have on the field expected to start and play all 4 quarters. And same thing for Mosley, a younger team, but you have guys like Sammy Freitas, who has really stepped into that leadership role. He had that experience last season. So I think that's the key difference, is the experience level from the Dolphins to the Tornadoes. And I mean, look at the score. It tells you that right there.
Right. And like you said, Coach Whitten, he won't say it. He said, this game is strictly business. There's nothing personal here.
Yeah.
Out down on the sidelines, the game is 28-0. I hear Coach Whitten said, whole team over here right now. He says, we are kicking their butts. And this one is about to get out of hand because we are about to put it away. And they really did. Going into the break, up 6 touchdowns. I mean, this one, he can say it's business all he wants, but he really made a statement tonight. Is like, hey, last year that senior class at Bay, they're special. They might have, come in and surprised everybody. Might have been a little bit of an embarrassment to Mosley, who is, one that who's been leading the series, winning it 7 out of 10 times, 7 out of 10 in the last, decade. But tonight, this one, he really just wanted to put the full gas pedal on, running clock in the second half, and they just kept rolling. So Mosley with a big win tonight, obviously getting one over Rutherford last week. We'll talk about Rutherford a little bit shortly, because clearly there might be more to them than the eyes see, but a big win tonight for Mosley. They improved to 2-0. Take us up to Bonifay for that game with Holmes County and North Bay Haven.
Yeah, I mean, that was a great game too. Obviously looked a little one-sided. I mean, this play just shows where it's going to start off. Lumpkin has a little bit of slip there, wet conditions as well. We saw that all over the Panhandle, but then he does this. I mean, you can barely see him sideline. Everyone's so excited. The coaches, the players, everyone's pumped up for that. I mean, I was walking into the field. I heard fans everywhere talking to me, talking to each other, talking about last weekend's game, and they didn't want to talk about it. They didn't want to harp on it too much, and then they do this tonight. So North Bay Haven obviously struggled. We know they have a bunch of great players on that team, but Holmes County was really tough on them. I mean, Lakota Johnson made a great run. Willie Hawley scoring the touchdown here. A big issue was Johnson had room in the pocket. I don't know if it was wet conditions. The coverage was just too good, but a lot of their receivers were not able to make the grabs, dropping passes. So definitely a more of a run-heavy game, especially on the Blue Devils side. That's what we kind of expect to see from them. Obviously, Serpis can't really bring that guy down. So, I mean, the Blue Devils definitely making a statement from last week, wanting to bounce back. They did just that, throwing Colby Powell in there as well later in the second quarter, really using all that they had. So I heard all the coaches on the sideline talking about North Bay Haven made a big play, and they said they just want it more. They want it more right now, as North Bay Haven was kind of inching for a comeback. And so I think that was really the message of this game. I think Holmes County really wanted this one, and it showed with a 44-14 win.
Right. I mean, you got to say, Holmes County certainly, they've dominated this series now. You said they were, 4-0 over the last...
Since 2015,
since
yeah.
2015,
So now
5-0. They got North Bay Haven's number. They did it again tonight. That team, they're senior heavy, Holmes County, and last week we kind of looked and we saw, okay, they lost 28-14 at Mariana. We don't know as much about Mariana. They were kind of, rebuilding last year. Again, we'll get more to Mariana in a minute, but clearly Holmes County's got a team that can play. They really put up a dominant performance here tonight on their home field, and yeah, big win for Holmes County getting 1-1.
You talk to teams all the time. You talk to players and talk about, a loss in the season in any sport. And a lot of times they'll talk about how much that changed this season, how much it showed their flaws and what they needed to work on. And I mean, that could have been the case last week for Holmes County, because look what they did tonight. They were clicking, connecting, obviously still little wobbles here and there, but 44-14. They looked a lot better than they did last week.
Yeah, I mean, I gotta say, definitely a confidence boost for Holmes County after that 0-1 start. But this next one, kind of key to, that Holmes County storyline. And this really, for me, might be the storyline of the night around the Panhandle. That Mariana winning 46-0 over Liberty County. Yeah. Mariana.
Highlight for this real
There's
quick.
A highlight right there.
We love
There's
a
your
good
Bulldog.
mascot.
Wearing its home purple. This was a dominant performance by Mariana. Aiden Clemens, this man was out there putting on an absolute show. What'd they say? Five touchdowns tonight? Five touchdowns. This 2-point conversion threw me off. I didn't even know what was going on. It's hard when you're not actually at the game to kind of come back and see the highlights and kind of piece it all together. But Mariana, 46-0. We saw them put up a 28-14 victory over Holmes County last week, who, of course, we just saw dominate North Bay Haven. So little bit of, all right, who's beating who, what's going on. One week, we kind of just get a taste of what's going to happen. This week, things kind of start to piece themselves together a little bit. Coach Glover seems like he's got those guys, working like a well-oiled machine 2 weeks into the season. Yeah. An absolute dominant performance by Mariana tonight. And Clemens, he looks to be like,
Amari Clemens is the real
deal.
And that's something I talked about this last week, but Coach Glover, when I talked to him before the season started, he just talked about how they could get the ball down the field, but they could never get it into the end zone, and that was their biggest issue. They dealt with injuries last season, quarterback troubles, not knowing who their guy was. Obviously, they have their guy with RJ Mays this year, and I mean, they don't even necessarily need the passing game too much when you have a sophomore like Amari Clemens who can reach the end zone 5 times in the game like that. I mean, it's exciting. Something's happening over there, and I know they're all excited over there about it, and they're fun to watch.
Yeah, that is a fun team to watch. Last year, they were still kind of figuring things out. They were kind of figuring out, all right, like, do we want to be that just all we do is run the ball team in the past? Clearly, they got a great running game, but this is a team who last year was like, okay, we can compete against all the 1R teams in the area, but we can't really compete against the teams in our own classification. That's Class 2 Suburban. I'd love to see them against somebody in their district pretty soon. But this Mariana team, they kind of opened some eyes this week. Big win for the Bulldogs in purple. We're going to check in on a couple of comments down here because I see you guys down in the chat. Starting off with Coach Old. Obviously, a shout out to Rutherford because they definitely did keep up with those Bluntstown Tigers tonight. A very hostile territory at Bulls Field. You got 4 Division I commits over there, 3 coming up on 4. There will be 4 by probably the end of this year. Jordan Pride back, the Texas A&M commit. We'll have to get to that in just a little bit. But Rutherford keeping things close, a 17-13 loss, but keeping it close there up in Bluntstown. I got a lot of people talking about that Chipley and Holmes County game next week. We'll get to the rest of those next week matchups shortly. I don't know if you were watching Fever, where time got cut a little short. Weren't able to get all of those next games out. But Chipley 2-0, a big win up in Geneva tonight, playing up in Alabama. So we got a 2-0 Chipley against a 1-1 Holmes County. Holmes County coming off a big win tonight. They'll be back at Memorial Field, so they definitely like that home field advantage.
Oh, yeah.
That's a bit of rivalry. They're 10 minutes down the road.
Yeah.
I see some Game of the Week question mark. We talked about this last year. It really should be a fan vote because you see what happens when I pick the game. So definitely going to take that one into consideration.
Yeah, maybe throw a poll out on Facebook.
We could see you out there next week. We'll see. But I think that's a good choice. We'll have to look at the rest of those matchups and take them into consideration. But Bluntstown, Mariana, Game of the Week next week. Okay, Coach Nichols. I like that one as well. That's a good idea.
Yeah.
That's a good idea.
Yeah.
Maybe we will put it to a vote this week.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll get a Mariana, Bluntstown, a Chipley, Holmes County, and then we'll look at the rest of the games and maybe get a third option in there. But I like both of those. Those should be pretty good. Let's check in on the Vernon and Franklin County game. Obviously, 2 teams looking for their first win tonight. What did you see in this one?
I mean, this was the game that we were kind of watching this week, wondering if it was going to be played, obviously, over in Franklin County. Thankfully, they were able to play this game tonight. I think both of these teams were teams that struggled last season, wanting to know really what these 2 teams are going to look like when they look like they're kind of playing an evenly matched opponent. So This one was interesting. I mean, we saw it go back and forth. Some mistakes on both sides of the ball, but Vernon picking up the win over Franklin County. I think it was just interesting to kind of see these two teams match up together and see what they could do.
Right, and again, this was two coaches looking for their first wins with their new teams. Of course, Coach Cooper at Franklin County looking for his first win. And then Coach Tillman, he was previously at Rutherford. He's been all over the Panhandle, Bozeman, Rutherford, Weewa, getting his first win as a Vernon Yellow Jacket. So I know those guys, those young guys in Vernon, got to be excited about getting that under their belt. You know, some good things to come up in Vernon, hopefully for both of these teams. But, of course, this was a matchup that was close last year, both teams that were looking for their first wins. And then this year, close once again. This really honestly could have been the game of the night, you know, as far as it comes down to close scores, because we didn't have very many of those. Both young teams looking to get their foot under them, but Vernon picking up a strong win over there, their first one of the season. So congrats to those Yellow Jackets. This is another one they were talking about. It's the last one that we have highlights of. Yeah. It's Blountstown and Rutherford. We mentioned Jordan Pride. Talk to me about what you saw in this game.
Well, I mean, this was another game where Blountstown's playing up to another team, obviously Rutherford being larger. So, you know, that's always an adjustment for, you know, a 1A school to play with a bigger team. Wondering what these two teams are going to look like, both coming off losses from last week. We've had a lot of hype around Blountstown this season. I mean, they have a ton of top players. We have Artavius Jones, Ashton Mosley, Amarion Hover, and Jordan Pride, obviously, all big players for them. And those have been guys that we've been trying to keep an eye out for. I think there's something not necessarily clicking on the offense yet for the Tigers, having Tristan King step in as quarterback. And, you know, they lost a lot of other top seniors last year. Elam Johnson was a big receiver for the Tigers as well. So I think they're still trying to find that rhythm offensively. And, you know, some players still not being back healthy completely. Jordan Pride, one of those. We saw him make a big impact on the punt return, 95 yards to the house for his debut back with the Tigers in the 2023 season. But it's interesting because just there was so much talk and excitement about Blountstown, and I think there's so much potential from this team, but just ready to see that click for the Tigers because we haven't seen that necessarily click on the field for them.
Right, and you know, like we mentioned, a lot of that hype this offseason was us, you know. Yeah. Of course, when you talk about somebody, you put a lot of pressure on them, and I know they probably are now like, man, of course, you made us out to be the best team in the state. They still, you know, have a long season to go. Last year, they started off with a 500 record before breaking off and going to the Final Four. Of course, it always helps when you get an All-American safety back on your team. You know, he's the top-ranked safety in the country, according to ESPN, and, you know, that crew, they will figure things out. Of course,
it's only week 2.
It's going to take time.
Only week 2.
But Rutherford, a strong performance up there. They kept things close. I think when you look at it, like we were talking about, the Holmes County, Mariana, who's beating who, you look at it and it's like, all right, week 1, Mosley, they beat Rutherford. But of course, I watched that, and you know, Rutherford definitely put up a fight in the first quarter. I was like, okay, things get interesting. Mosley put that one away. It was 35-6. Then Bay, they come out and they dominate Arnold 49-0. And then this week, 62-7, Mosley over Bay. So it's like, all right, who's beating who? Rutherford clearly a little better than, you know, was given credit last week.
Which is good to see. Yeah, it's good to see, especially under Coach Floyd. I know there's a lot of potential on this team as well. So it's good to see them be able to connect. Obviously, another new QB, Jason Havens Jr., stepping into that position as well. And so obviously, when you start out the season with a team like Mosley, a really large team like that, a powerful team, we saw what they did again tonight, and then, you know, figure out those mistakes, like I said, and then I think we saw a better version of Rutherford this week for sure.
Right. Well, we are going to check in once again on the rest of those scores from tonight. If you're just checking in with us, South Walton, they lost at home. Bozeman, a close one on their home field. Freeport Falls, and then we had a few more for the rest of the night. Walton picking up a big win. We talked about Chipley earlier, 34-13, and then a few games that were not played tonight. Arnold Sneeds, Belle Weewa, and Graceville did not play their game with Asilo Christian as well. Before we get into that, I know we had the play of the night on Fever. Do we have that here tonight? Well, we've seen it about 300 times. You know, we saw it running through on those Blountstown highlights. But once again, Jordan Pride, you know, loses the ball, runs back into his own end zone. That's pretty much an 100-yard return right there.
And this is still when we're nursing knee injury a little bit. You see the brace still on him, not coming back fully yet too. So
Right, coming off that ACL tear, he's been out for practically, since basketball season.
Yeah.
He's been out, so almost a full, not full year, but it's been a while that he's been out, and that's one way to come out tonight. It'll be nice to see him back in action, back there anchoring the back end of the defense. Welcome back, Jordan Pride.
Yeah, we've been waiting for the return, and he did not disappoint.
Did not disappoint. Well, we're going to check in on next week's games. We got Bay visiting Gadsden County, South Walton to Port St. Joe. That's always a fun one. Port St. Joe coming off a bye week. If you haven't seen them at all tonight, they were resting this week.
Yeah.
Freeport is going to be visiting Liberty County.
Another battle of the Bulldogs.
Got it there. And then Mosley visiting Arnold. That'll be tough for Arnold. Go ahead and see what we got for next week.
Well, another one we talked about already, Mariana Bluntstown. That one's going to be exciting. I mean, there's a lot of excitement around Mariana right now. And like I said before, there's been excitement around Bluntstown. So Coach Nichols might be onto something with that one. We'll definitely see what we decide on that, or the fans decide. Baker and Bozeman, Chipley versus Holmes County, another cross-county rivalry. That was game of the week last year. It was at Chipley, and I mean, that one was an exciting game. I think it was early on as well. It might have even been week 2. I remember being there early, and I was like, okay, this is what football's like here in the Panhandle. So that was really an exciting one, and I know the Blue Devils will be excited to host that one. And then Rocky Bayou Christian versus Cottondale. They were also on a bye this week, so that's why we didn't see any action from the Hornets.
Rutherford at Fort Walton Beach. That'll be a tough one. We saw Fort Walton go in and beat South Walton on their home field. And then we got 2 teams, Weewa and Vernon, on bye weeks. Not sure if Weewa will be looking to reschedule that Bell game. I know, of course, that one was postponed. Not sure if it was canceled, but definitely the Sneads-Arnold game will most likely not be played. Those 2 are off next week, but we got a good slate of action. I would have to say, based on what everybody is saying, it will have to come down to a Mariana Bluntstown or Holmes County Shipley game of the week. Those are of course, you guys can light me up because I have been picking terribly with this so far.
We could always throw like a Port St. Joe, South Walton in the mix too.
I would say the other one would be Port St. Joe, South Walton. Port St. Joe off the bye, South Walton coming off a loss, but that game is always fun. I would have to say it's definitely those 3 matchups for game of the week. So maybe we'll see if we can put out a poll this week and see where that kind of goes. You guys can decide, because I'm going to give it to Kaleigh every week because I'm terrible at this. I'll take it. But yes. Looking down in the comments, again, I see more people vying for that Holmes County and Chipley game of the week. We got another run this year. Chipley versus Bluntstown at the end of the year. Yes, that should be a very good one. I'm sure Bluntstown will figure some things out by then. Chipley undefeated so far. I got a question about North Bay.
They're hosting Destin.
Yes.
At North Bay Haven, their 100th game.
Yes.
So that's a big one for them.
Yes, that was not on there, but North Bay Haven, they will be at their own high school this week. They will not be at Tommy Oliver. They will not be at Arnold. They will not be at Bozeman. They will be playing at North Bay Haven Charter Academy. On the field there is the 100th game of their high school's existence. So that should be a big one. They'll be hosting the Destin Sharks.
Yeah. Another one not on there, Walton and Union County. They're hosting Union County. Did we skip a page?
Oh, we skipped a page.
I was like, we're missing a list of them. Yeah, there we go.
There we go. Destin at North Bay Haven. Franklin County will be visiting Jay. Union County will be visiting Walton, and then we got Graceville going to Sneed. So I knew we were missing a handful of teams.
They started coming up in my head. I was like, Walton, and then we got North Bay Haven. Then I was like, where's Sneed's next week?
Thank you, Miss Kendra, for reminding us about North Bay Haven, because then you've opened up a whole new world to the rest of those games.
4 more games.
Yes. A lot more Chipley versus Holmes. So far, the comments are winning Chipley versus Holmes. So far, that's what we got. But I think that's probably going to do it for us tonight. We got a lot of games in the books. We learned a little bit more about these teams. Yeah. We'll learn a little bit more next week. And then about by week 5, 6, when things are really going to start to take shape, we'll figure out who's elite, who's in the mix, and who's, looking to get out to next year. So we're going to call it for tonight. This was a fun week of action. Again, like I said, I will not be choosing the game of the week. Don't look to me. Next week's game will be out of my hands. I will not be picking any more 50-point contests.
So that we can blame the fans if
Yes, we'll blame the fans if it's a bad game. So all of you down in the comments, we're coming for you next week if that's a blowout on either side. But that is going to do it for us tonight. Friday Night Fever Afterburn. If you want to watch all of the highlights from this week's games, go over to mypanhandle.com, click on the sports tab. You'll be able to find it all there. We will get a poll up for those game of the weeks. Don't worry, we will find you. But for now, that's going to do it for us. We'll see you next week.